Hey everyone! In today's video, I'll be talking about something a little different from my usual topics. We're going to explore a sort of alternate timeline of rail development in Central Europe, mostly East Central Europe, and what I think is one of the coolest and most useful pieces of rolling stock we never got in real life, but that should definitely have been built. And the best thing about this what-if rail vehicle is that we don't just have to imagine what it would have looked like, because it actually exists as an HO scale model that anyone can buy. How is that possible? Let me explain. So, much like many other people who've been fascinated by trains for much of their lives, I have a collection of model trains, HO scale to be precise. And one of the manufacturers that I have bought a good number of models from over the years is the Eastern German company Pico. Pico has a very diverse range of models on offer, with most being carefully crafted replicas of real locomotives and rolling stock. But much like other model railway manufacturers, Pico has a beginner range too, called their hobby range, where they are more open to cutting corners on realism in order to keep production costs and prices lower than on their premium offerings. Many of Pico's buyers reside in Central Europe, so Germany, Poland, Czechia, Austria, Hungary, etc. And despite an ever more diverse product range, replicating Central European trains is something Pico still focuses on heavily. One of the region's most famous trains from recent years has been the Siemens-built RailJet, operated by Austrian Federal Railways ÖBB and Czech Railways ČD. These trains are hauled by locomotives of the Eurosprinter family and run at speeds of up to 230 km per hour, and through their great branding and liveries, they've become firm favorites with rail enthusiasts across Central Europe. Model train manufacturers didn't overlook the RailJet's popularity either, and Austrian companies Roco and Jägerndorfer both produced detailed scale models in HO. Now, Pico did not want to be left out when it came to making RailJet models, but they decided on a different approach. Instead of competing with the other manufacturers on the premium market, their RailJet was projected to be a model for their beginner range. This posed a problem though, because a faithful recreation would have meant creating new toolings for the entire train, something that's quite expensive and that runs counter to Pico's overall strategy for their beginner range, which relies heavily on livery variations of a few existing models to mimic rolling stock from all over Europe. And that's what Pico ended up doing for their hobby RailJet as well. Instead of creating accurate new models for the RailJet's coaches, they took their trusty existing tooling for a conventional intercity coach, derived from a design mostly operated by DB, and simply applied the RailJet's Austrian and Czech liveries onto it. This created models that were hopelessly inaccurate compared to the prototype, but they hoped that beginner range customers simply wouldn't care enough and that a RailJet lookalike would be good enough for them. Considering they're still selling these lookalike coaches after many years in their range, it seems to have worked. But there was a further problem Pico couldn't just fix with some paint. You see, RailJets are push-pull train sets, which means they have specially built cab cars. Pico didn't have a cab car for their beginner range intercity coaches, so at least this one thing needed to be designed new for their RailJet model. They were now faced with a choice: either create a more accurate replica of the real cab car and have it look awkward next to the rest of Pico's RailJet lookalike coaches, or create a cab car that matched better with the rest of the stock at the cost of realism. Pico went for the second option, and that's where we finally get back to this video's main topic. Because what Pico created was not a RailJet cab car. It was a cab car taking the body shell of their typical intercity coach and combining it with the Eurosprinter-derived front end that the real RailJet cab cars also have. And when I looked at this model again a few months ago online, I realized something. If we treat this cab car not like Pico intended, as a cheap recreation of a RailJet, but as its own design entirely, it suddenly becomes way more interesting and even respectable in its own right. You see, what Pico accidentally designed here was a piece of rolling stock that, had it been built like this in real life, would have been a game changer for railways across Eastern Central Europe and beyond. To understand why, we need to look at intercity train operations across the region. Locomotive-hauled sets of fast and modern coaches have been the norm for intercity train travel across Europe for many decades, and after the fall of the Iron Curtain, these coach designs also made their way into the former Eastern Bloc countries. And whereas in countries like Germany, Switzerland, or Belgium, high-speed capable cab cars were added to conventional intercity trains in the 1990s to increase their operational flexibility, this never happened in Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, or Hungary. These countries maintained big fleets of fast and modern intercity coaches and still retain many to this day, but their consists are not optimized for quick turnarounds due to the lack of suitable cab cars in their rosters. Today, this problem is increasingly alleviated thanks to the introduction of multiple units and new push-pull coach sets, but another approach could have yielded results earlier and perhaps on a wider scale. And this other approach can be represented by our reimagined Pico cab car. Because imagine if in the late 2000s and early 2010s, when Siemens was building their RailJets for Austria and Czechia, they had designed a variant of just the cab car to be operated with the large conventional coach fleets of Eastern Central Europe. For sure, technical upgrades to enable push-pull operation would have been necessary across these conventional fleets, as well as allowing this new cab car to operate with different classes of locomotives and across multiple countries, but I simply can't imagine there wouldn't have been a market for this. Keep in mind that Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary still operate a huge number of conventional locomotive-hauled intercity trains to this day with largely no push-pull capability, and Czechia, despite having now received new RailJet-derived comfort jet coach sets, is also not done with their conventional fleet either. And of course, train manufacturers like Siemens like to sell lots of all new equipment instead of enabling the continued use of existing stock, but I'm again sure that Siemens could have made good money from selling these cab cars, as well as the hardware and software upgrades to the existing coach fleets, and maybe also some new Eurosprinter or Vectron locomotives as a part of this same package. The introduction of a universal cab car for Eastern Central Europe's intercity trains would have allowed for new levels of operational flexibility domestically and across borders, and would have further future-proofed the extensive conventional coach fleets of Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, and Hungary, fleets that are in some cases even still expanding today. And beyond service with national operators, these cab cars could have found second homes with budget operators like RailJet as well, who run trains all across the region. In my eyes, this would have been a sensible, truly sustainable rolling stock platform that would have brought new benefits and conveniences for the operators along with it, without requiring the total replacement of the existing stock. Alas, we didn't get such a universal cab car in real life, and long-distance trains across Eastern Central Europe are still predominantly not push-pull capable. All we have to glimpse at this alternate timeline is this Pico model, a model pretending to be something it isn't while being something that never was. Thanks for watching.